the Clippers. I like the Jazz here. Kawhi, I don't think is coming back. Chris Paul is. But it's interesting. You see this all the time. See it in business all the time. Somebody leaves, CEO. And everybody's like, well, we'll be fine without her, without him. Remember Barry Switzer took over for Jimmy Johnson, 12-4. Next year won a Super Bowl. We all good. Then it was 10-6, 6-10, and he was done. Jimmy Johnson had built such a strong foundation that you could flourish for a couple years without it. Go ask the Pelicans, Thunder, Rockets, and Clippers how things went the next year when Chris Paul left. Don't kid yourself. Phoenix needs Chris Paul. Sign him to a contract. I don't want to hear all this, well, I got off to a 2-0 lead without Chris Paul. Chris is not your number one scoring option. And because of that, and you have Devin Booker, there's a lot of nuance and little things that you don't detect right away. Don't kid yourself. The Pelicans, the Thunder, the Rockets, and the Clippers, we looked it up this morning. I won't go down and bore the radio audience, but the numbers don't lie. Teams aren't the same without Chris. They're not. There's a lot of things Chris Paul does. They're nuanced, and he doesn't have to make, basketball is so fast like hockey, you don't have to make a million decisions a day. Jeff Bezos always talks about this, the richest guy in America. And he always talks about, as a CEO, Bezos says, you don't want a CEO making 50 decisions a day. One or two big ones. That a CEO should be looking 3 years down the road and building. I remember one time when I worked at the other place, I used to arrive at the exact same time as the guy that ran the company. His name was George Bodenheimer. And this always stuck with me. So his town car would arrive at the same time as my little cruddy car did. And we were always walking into work together. And he was kind enough to give me 2 minutes. He would always give, Colin, what's going on today? And George was a man of the people. Knew everybody in the ESPN kitchen. He knew every janitor. He knew everybody. And I said, I asked him a question one time. And he goes, that's tomorrow. He goes, Colin, I got a 10-year plan. You should come up to my office sometimes. Here's what we're going to be in 10 years. 10 years? 10 days from now, I don't know what's going to be on my show. He goes, I got to figure out 10 years. Can't worry about 10 minutes, 10 days. And that always stuck with me. And that's what Jeff Bezos says. You can't give the CEO too much minutia. One or two big decisions a day. He's got to be thinking, contemplating ahead, our obstacles. That's what Chris Paul does. Basketball is so fast. Phoenix can do 97% of this stuff without Chris Paul. But it's those one or two nightly decisions, just those big moments in the huddle late, out of bounds play, taps you on the shoulder, guard him, don't forget. That's where Chris Paul has value. So I know you're talking yourself into this morning. We do not need Chris Paul. We are winning without him. Be very careful. I've seen that my whole life. You can win briefly. The energy, Phoenix is loud, but you need Chris Paul. So baseball signs guys to 10-year contracts. Chris Paul, you're going to probably sign a 3, and by the 3rd year, you're not going to love the contract. Deal with it. Okay? Deal with it. It's like when you sign me. Companies love it initially. They hate it at the end. But you lose this personality, good luck. Good luck. Fend for yourself if you lose Joy and I. Heard brought to you by Jersey Mike's. Be a sub above. Cuttino Mobley played over a decade in the NBA. Joining us now live. Listen, I got to tell you something, Cuttino. I watched that game last night, and no Kawhi and no Chris Paul, and I thought it was one of the best NBA games I've seen. I feel like those are the two best coaches left. Those are the two best teams left. They both played 9 guys, and all of them contributed. I think we're watching the NBA Finals, Cuttino. That's what it feels like to me. Your thoughts?
No, you're right. First of all, how you guys doing?
Great.
You brought up a great point about Chris Paul, and I think he's undervalued with a lot of teams. And I think he's undervalued because he gets hurt a lot. That this series is like a NBA final series to me. Yeah. It's a lot more exciting. Listen, I love the Trae Youngs of the world. I just don't believe in Milwaukee at the moment. No disrespect to Milwaukee. But Chris Paul, to me, is like that amazing parent, that amazing teacher. right? And especially during this COVID situation, you value teachers a lot more, especially parents that are at home trying to tutor their children.
Right.
So, Chris Paul, I don't think it's 90%. I think it's literally they're learning how to win. So when I went to the Clippers in 05, 06, there was Elton Brand getting 20 and 10 and Corey Maggette and those guys. They were almost there. But it's just something towards the end of games, 2 or 3 possessions where they're losing and you're losing 30-something, 40 games because of bonehead plays. And what you do, Colin and Joy, is you psych yourself out, not only in that game, but the next 2 or 3 games ahead. So what I think Chris Paul is doing for these guys is helping them believe, even if it's a 3-year, crazy amount of money for a smaller guard, I think what he's doing is he's helping them learn how to win on a consistent basis. Even if you go, I lose 2 games in a row, Chris Paul comes in, he can reboot the team. And I think that's what the Clippers are missing, where they have that point guard that can really get them under control, emotionally, physically, right, mentally. That's what Chris Paul, top 5 point guard ever to me, that can do for a team. So his value is like unbelievable. He's kind of like the LeBron James of teams. When he goes on a team, the team's amazing.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. The teachers in the pandemic, like we don't give teachers credit until we have a pandemic and you go, oh, wow, teachers are incredibly valuable. It's interesting on the replays at the end of the game. We've been arguing about this morning is, listen, the last 2 minutes take 30 minutes. And I think there should be replay, but used very infrequently. My rule has always been 30 seconds. If you can't see it, then it's just human error. It's got to be an egregious mistake. But as a player, does it, you go from having the momentum in the crowd to sitting around. How do you view replay?
You know what? To me, is when you had the guy on earlier, he made a great point. I think they made that up when they were drinking heavy, some whiskey or cognac or something, smoking cigars. I have no clue because, listen, guys, think about this. When you do the replay and you see that the defender or someone did something prior to the incident, but yet you don't look at that part. You look at the incident itself. That's the weirdest thing to me, right? Like, okay, the reason why the ball went out of bounds is because of this, or the reason why this happened is because of that. But you don't look at that. You look at the moment, right? The situation where the ball's going out of bounds and it went off on Devin Booker's hand, so there was a wrong call. How about the hand check or the grabbing or the whatever it is? Well, my thing is, it's like, if you see something before that, why not call that? So my logic opposed to what they look at on the replay to me is I just don't understand it.
I said, it's funny. I was talking about the Phoenix Suns, and I said, Catino, they remind me of that Seahawk team a few years ago, where the Seahawks and the Suns don't have a history of dominating. And then you started watching the Seahawks, and they had this young guy, Russell Wilson, and all their young players peaked at the exact time, and they had this good coach, Pete Carroll, Monty Williams, right? Guy'd been fired, but respected coach, and you have Russell Wilson in your Booker or something, and then all of a sudden you watch Seattle play, and you're like, are they the fastest football team I've ever seen in my life? This doesn't make how they were good last year, but all the young players harmonized at the exact same time. You'd listen to that crowd in Seattle, and you're like, you can't beat them at home. You can't. And I watched Phoenix, and I don't think it's lightning in a bottle. I think their young players are all peaking at the exact same time, and the belief system now. DeAndre Ayton thinks he's the best big in the league. Did you ever play on a team that was young? Maybe it was the Clippers, and all of a sudden you get into a stretch, and players almost play above themselves. That the belief system is so strong, you're willing yourself to wins.
Yeah, and I gave you the Clippers was an example of that, where it's myself and Sam Cassell came in, and the Corey Maggette, who's always a great scorer, and Elton Brands, who was a leader. He had